My name is Joe Peroni, and this is the Rise Above Project. And today I'm going to answer the question, is venting emotionally intelligent? So before we get into the actual show, let me just answer the question right up front so you know where I stand on this. No, venting is not emotionally intelligent. It's actually, at best, counterproductive, and at worst, it's abusive, plain and simple. Now, I'm not going to blame anybody here because we see this big push, again, social media, right? It doesn't have to be correct, it just has to be popular. And if you see it enough, people believe it, so that everybody now believes, or many people believe, that venting is a good thing to do in your relationships. But much of this was started with Dr. John Gray in the early, it was 1990 or so. And he wrote a very popular, very famous book called Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. This book has sold over 25 million copies. It's in like every language you can think of. And he, in there, stated many things about the differences between men and women. And in this book, well, before I get to that, let me say this about John Gray. What's really interesting about him is if you look up the information on him, and which I did a couple of years ago, what you would find out is, and he's been married and divorced like 5 times. And in one of his marriages, he married this relationship coach, Dr. DeAngelis, and she's also been married and divorced about 5 times. So between the both of them, about 10 marriages. Not blaming them for that, but with Dr. John Gray, it's really interesting because with all of his money, he must have been scrubbing the internet. Because the other day when I looked up the information to do this show, it's nowhere to be found. It says he's on his 2nd marriage now. And the other part that's interesting is that the school that he went to become a doctor, it's not accredited. But if you look up that information, that becomes very hazy as well. So I just wanted you to know that because he is controversial. But no matter if he is or if he isn't, what is true is that his information is incredibly popular and it's been used by therapists and lay people alike. Here are some of the things that Dr. John Gray has been pushing for the last 30 years or so. Number 1, he said that men's brains are designed for action. Women's brains are designed for talking and not action. Number 1. We could already see problems. Number 2, men's brains are designed to seek solutions. Women's brains are designed to just see problems. Now, of course, these are blanket statements by him, not by me. Number 3, he says when women talk, I don't know what chapter this is in his book. It might be the first one. But he says when women talk, a man should just listen. I think we could all agree that we need to be good listeners. But he says, listen, don't speak, nod your head every once in a while. And if you're listening to a woman, you should say the words, I hear you, every now and then. Don't try to solve the problem, and don't try to make her feel better. Okay, so before we get into the problems on this information, let's take a look at, let's say, a comprehensive synthesis of human brain studies, actual empirical evidence. And what we find here is that there's only one real significant difference between a man's and a woman's brain, and this would be size. The brain is in direct proportion to the size of the person. So in other words, a man's brain typically is 11% larger than a woman's. Again, for those people out there wanting to make it a man versus woman thing, it has nothing to do with a man's brain being bigger for whatever reason. The only reason is typically a man's brain is 11% bigger is because they tend to be 11% larger as a human being. And that's really it. So then what's the answer here? Why do we see such behavioral differences between a man and a woman, at least in this particular area of venting that I'm talking about? Or why are there expectations? In other words, here's an expectation. The expectation that a lot of women have now is that They can speak, they can vent, they can whine, they can cry, complain. A man has to sit there quietly and not try to make her feel better in any way and not offer any type of effective feedback. You have to just sit there. And the thought here is, according to Dr. John Gray, is that the brain is constructed that way, that women are that way, and they're not looking for a solution, they're looking to talk, but yet men are trying to look for a solution, and that's where the issue is. However, what he doesn't answer here is that what if a man, what if a husband, what if a partner, a male partner says to a woman, I'm having a little bit of difficulty at work, I'm not making as much money as I used to, I'm not sure if I could take care of the family as well as I did before, I'm very anxious about this. The chances of a woman having something to say about that, in other words, helping him to try to get a better job, or saying that that boss isn't good, or to look for some type of solution is pretty high. And is that bad? No, I think two adults should have a good conversation about how to improve their lives, and this would make sense. So if it's a brain situation, like Dr. John Gray says, then why is it a woman can look for solutions or tell a man what to do or offer solutions to a man, but when the man is listening to a woman and offers up a solution, then all bets are off. He can't do that because her brain is not prepared for that. No, because it's an easy answer, because it's socially constructed. That's why. Because somebody put it in a book, then somebody puts it on social media, and then we have this big wave of people not allowing other people to become mature. Because if you're the type of person that needs to emotionally dump on somebody and not expect any type of feedback from the other person, you're emotionally immature. And if this continues, then you're going to think it's a natural, normal thing, when it's really not. It's basically expecting a person to crawl their whole life, and if they get up to walk, also they can say, no, you have to keep crawling. Like, that's what you're supposed to do. So that doesn't make any sense there. So let's take a look at, let's say, the average here, a man and woman. Again, it could be different people, it could be switched back and forth, but let's just say, because people do expect the woman to be the one talking and the man is supposed to be the one listening and not offering up any solutions, let's take a look at the average situation. So there's a man and woman at a breakfast table. The woman starts to vent. She complains. She whines. She's not looking for a solution. She's just looking for a way to dispense her negativity on her partner. And what she does is, this is called rumination, right? And so she gets better and better at ruminating and focusing on the problem, which becomes multiple problems. And in the end of that, she might feel better because she can say, I got it off my chest, but she didn't get to the root cause. And what happened is that she strengthened that muscle, so to speak, and now she's going to get better and better at complaining. And now when she sees her partner, it's like, it's not, oh, I love you, I get to spend some quality time with you. It's going to be, I'm going to emotionally dump all my stuff on you. And so in the long run, this does not make her feel better. It makes her feel worse, because she is essentially meditating on problems and negativity. So what does this do to a man who's in a relationship with a woman whose number one goal is for her to be happy? Well, he doesn't see her as being happy. He doesn't see any way that he can offer a solution or to try to make things better, or at least have an honest, reciprocal conversation with her in order for her to figure out her situation of what she's going to do, because he's probably not that narcissistic to think, I can solve all your problems, but maybe we can bounce some ideas back and forth, and maybe we can move you to an area that maybe you can take some action on something else. This is going to raise a man's anxiety because he is solution focused and wants his partner to be happy, but he's not allowed to do that. So he's got his arms tied, and like Dr. John Gray would say, just put your head down, nod every once in a while and say, I hear you, and just be there for the negativity, even though you're going to end up being the target of this negativity eventually. So the man will start to build up some resentments, and he will start to get angry. So now she essentially is putting her negative feelings on him, and hers don't go away. So this is really what we're looking at here. So what's the difference between emotional abuse and emotional dumping? There isn't any. It's the same exact thing. Because your partner, whether it's a man or a woman, sure, they want to be there to have those conversations. You should be able to be open and honest with somebody. You should be able to have the courage to be open. It creates intimacy. But if there's only one partner who's allowed to do all the talking and the other person has to nod knowingly and nothing ever gets fixed, this is abusive. So a good partner wants to be a sounding board. They want to have a healthy conversation. They want to have a conversation where there's effective feedback between each person. But if you turn a person into a dartboard, if you turn them into an emotional toilet bowl, there's no good that can come out of that. No matter what Dr. John Gray and a lot of his disciple type of people say, it's not going to work. So let's take a quick look at healthy venting versus emotional dumping. If you're going to vent in a healthy way, you don't want to blame other people. In emotional dumping, you blame other people, and you never take any responsibility. In healthy venting, you would stick to one topic because there's an actual issue you want to talk about. In emotional dumping, you complain about multiple people and multiple issues, never really realizing that you're the focal point of all of it because you're the one that's involved in all that. So you're still not taking a look at what you have to do about this, and maybe you should take some responsibility and be held accountable. Healthy venting would be, again, owning up to your mistakes that you've made to get to that point. Emotional dumping is, again, taking no responsibility and at worst, too, blaming your partner for things, and at best, just blaming everybody else around you, including your family from like 30 years ago. That's always a good one. Continuing healthy venting is when you work together for a solution. It's really interesting. I was in a men's group earlier today, and it's really interesting because when one person wants to talk, it's kind of like you troubleshoot and you listen to this person, and there's this thought in psychology when it comes, like, if you're listening to a woman and if you have something to say, you're not a good listener. No, when you actually do have something good to say, when you have something productive to say, when you have something that is directly talking to their problem or their issue, and you're trying to help somebody move from their pain, or at least be able to accept the pain that they have, that means you are listening because you're responding in a kind and a respectful and a skillful way. It means you are listening. So this thought that a man in a conversation with a woman is not allowed to say anything or else he's not a good listener, I don't know where that information came from. But again, that's not emotionally intelligent either. So in this men's group, we can work or talk or listen and all of it, and we actually have a real conversation with each person. So again, working together for solution. It's emotionally intelligent. Emotional dumping is when you play the victim and you're always the star of this play and how everybody is screwing you over. Again, not emotionally intelligent. In healthy venting, you're open to feedback, which is really nice in a men's group because you can tell if somebody's overly defensive, they're not really there for help. They're just there to dump their stuff on everybody else. In emotional dumping, somebody gets defensive, or they expect silence from somebody, or they expect an agreement. I notice this too in a lot of conversations when we're talking about this venting. Venting indiscriminately is when somebody is, again, talking at somebody, saying all their negativity, and if somebody says something that's in a slight disagreement with that person, all of a sudden that person becomes the target. So again, that's not healthy. And in healthy venting, it actually feels good. It feels beneficial for both people. Because no, you're not going to solve every problem. And I think that's one of the biggest issues as being a human being, is that how do you solve unsolvable problems? Because many problems, and I would say almost all major problems are unsolvable, such as you're going to die one day, such as are you going to suffer? Probably. I mean, unless you have a tragic accident, but you're going to get old, you're going to get tired, parts of your body are going to break down, you're going to end up on medications, you're going to have physical issues. These are tough things. How do you get people through that? I don't know. I'm a human being. You can't solve unsolvable problems. You can try to make them a little bit better. You can maybe support people through that and let them know that they're loved and cared for. Those are probably some of the best things you can do. But again, in healthy venting, it feels beneficial to both people. In emotional dumping, it feels toxic. Now, it might not feel toxic to the person who's venting in that moment, but overall, the way their lifestyle is, it's going to be toxic. Because if you look at a person and say, oh, I'm going to let out all my negativity on this person, and they have to just sit there and take it, God forbid they ever talk or try to come up with a solution to make me feel better. Like, should we all want partners that don't want us to feel better? That doesn't make sense, does it? So those are the differences between healthy venting and emotional dumping. So what does the actual empirical evidence say about venting anger in a physical way? Because back in the day, a lot of therapists and psychologists thought that if you were a person who is angry, if you were going through an anger management program, for example, you could get anger out by hitting things, by taking a stick and whacking something, by hitting a pillow, by screaming into a pillow and doing these things. Well, how did that work out? Well, what they found out that it does it actually increases your anger. What it does is it increases your neural pathways to act out on your anger. So if there's somebody in your household and they're saying, I'm working on my anger, and they're punching a wall, they're throwing around punches into the air, they're yelling into pillows, the therapy's not going very well, because they actually do want to hit something, and now they are doing it, and it's not much of a leap for them to be able to do that to another person or an animal. So we know that that doesn't work. What does the evidence say about venting anger in an emotional way, in terms of venting and complaining and whining and crying to your partner? Well, lo and behold, it's the same thing. It increases your anger. It increases your neural pathways to continue to use your partner as a verbal punching bag. It increases your chances of getting more angry more often. And it also lowers the stimulus for you to get angry at small things now. So instead of getting angry at something that's a really big thing in your life, now you're going to get angry at the smallest of things. And so does this work? No. Interestingly enough, we can't say that there's causation here by the way we treat men and women in our society. I don't think we can go that far. But there's definitely a correlation when we tell men to be kind and to be soft and to be caring in our relationships with women, especially the way we converse or talk to them. But for women, it's like just unload as much as you want. Well, the evidence clearly states, so we could say indicates highly, that women are 2 times more likely than men to be emotionally violent. In other words, the yelling, the screaming, the acting out, the gossip, the bad-mouthing, the name-calling. Now, we could say, maybe, because somebody would, that in a relationship between a man and a woman, somebody causes this, and it's not possible for a woman to be 2 times more likely to be emotionally violent. Like, how is that a thing? Or maybe it's caused by the man, but it's just not measured somehow in the data. Well, then measure this data. Because if you have 2 women in a relationship, the chances of emotional violence are even higher in that relationship than it is with a man and a woman, because the other woman is going to be the one picking up the slack with the emotional violence. Interesting enough, even more, is that if we want to go down the road of physical violence in a relationship, if there's two women in a relationship, the chances of physical violence in that relationship is much higher than it is for a man and woman to be in a relationship. Those are just some facts there that are very difficult for people to look at. So again, to make my point today, and hopefully I've gotten it through well enough, is venting emotionally intelligent? No. Again, it's completely counterproductive. It's not healthy in any way. And on the worst end of it, it's abusive. So hopefully this has been beneficial to you in some way. My name is Joe Perrone. This is the Rise Above Project. Please subscribe and tell a friend. Thank you.